This is the Super Rad BMX Podcast. Down the first straight is the cruising Cornhusker over the jump bonsai Brad. Now your host Brad Fanshaw and Tim Lilladora.
Everybody, welcome. Man, this is Super Rad BMX Podcast, and we are so excited because it keeps getting better and better. Just when Tim and I think it's not going to get any better, it does. We had the drop as we're recording this. We just saw the drop of our second episode with Hollywood Mike Miranda come out, and you all are responding so well. We really appreciate. Our subscriptions have gone up on the Radmatic YouTube channel. There's lots of people watching the episodes. I mean, Tim, could you believe 2.1 million people watched that Mike Miranda episode? I mean,
I know, and it's gone up from there today.
Okay. Well, you know, the great thing about that is that we'll be making about $1 million on every episode if we can keep that up. So that's great. That's what BMX can do for you. And and just as a reminder, I'm Brad Fanshaw, and my co-host.
Hey, I'm Tim Lilladora. Thanks for coming on board tonight.
That's right, and it keeps getting great. As I said, we have had so far on the show people like Mike Miranda. We have had Bill Ryan from Supercross BMX. We've had Gork talking to us about the Hall of Fame and about the museum, but tonight, we're going to go from episode number 2 being all Hollywood to episode right here being all Vegas, because our guest tonight is none other than Tracer Finn. Tracer, how you doing tonight?
Excellent. I'm indoors.
Indoors. Why are you trying to make us think it's warm there?
A little bit. At least it's better than the storms. Yeah.
So, is this, let's just get right into it. Let's just say, is this like the epitome of Vegas nightlife right now, being on the Super Rad BMX Podcast?
Yes, I actually felt like, okay, I have showtime at 6:00. I have to be prepared. It just showbiz, literally, you guys heard from me earlier, double checking, always making sure the show's ready to go. Things are in its place. Do your best. So absolutely Vegas style.
No, we appreciate the professionalism. And while we're on that, we are going to say, Tim, our resident AV guy, had a little issue tonight. Tim, why don't you fill in what happened in Omaha, Nebraska this afternoon?
Okay. At about 5:00, my wife calls me on my phone, even though we're in the same house. She works at home. And she says, hey, the storm's coming. I'm like, what storm is coming? I'm getting ready for my podcast. And a storm blew through like we have not seen. It was basically tornado speed winds. There was no tornado, but the winds were more than 80 miles an hour. Oh. There are trees down everywhere. The park across my street, the branches are down. And 150,000 people are without power right now. And I was driving my truck. We live in a historic neighborhood and have a smaller garage and can't fit all our vehicles in. So we were racing to get my vehicle to parking garage nearby at a shopping mall. And on the way back, literally, I thought I was in the movie Twister. I mean, the streets were black. You couldn't see because of the rain, and there were trees down, and I was dodging branches. One hit the hood of my truck. I don't think it dented anything, but anyway, that's what we're dealing with. So I am live from my smartphone with a battery-powered light. But we're here.
The rest of your house is out of power, along with 150,000 people. You told me.
Yeah, I've been wearing this cool like headlamp around to try to see my way through the house.
Well, see,
yeah.
Tracer, Tim called me about an hour before airtime here, and he said, And he goes, you know what? I'm 150,000 people without power. And he said, but you know what? It's Tracer Finn. I'm pulling it off, man. I'm doing it with batteries. And I said, you're awesome, dude. You are awesome. And he made it happen.
Doing it with technology tied behind your back. I appreciate that. So I can come in second here.
So, hey, before we dive into this interview, which I know is going to be great, it's going to be like a Vegas show tonight. And we've got so many cool things to talk about, because I know there's some things that we can pull out of Tracer that haven't been discussed on some of the other, some of it we're going to bring up, but some of the other stuff that we can bring up is going to be fun. And before we get into that, I want to remind everyone, please follow us on Instagram. It's Super Rad BMX. Go there, follow us. We've been starting to get a lot of followers. We really appreciate that. But you can also go to YouTube, subscribe for free, and find all our shows. You go there, you subscribe, and leave us a comment because we want to know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. And then by the time you hear this, we are going to be live with all of our episodes on all of the podcasts, all of the podcast producers. Wherever you go to find podcasts, we're going to be there. Of course, we're going to be first on Apple iTunes. So go there. That's the most important one. Go there, give us a 5-star rating, a positive comment. You cannot believe how important that 5-star rating and the positive comment is, because the way the Apple algorithm works is the more comments you get, along with 5-star ratings, it puts us higher up. We're trying to get BMX to the top so that even more people find out about BMX, its history, and everything about it. So please do that. And one last thing at the end of the show, all of our t-shirts, check them out. They're available at radmatic.com. Go there, check them out. All the Super Rad BMX t-shirts. And let's get going, man, because today we welcome, like I said, Tracer Finn, one of the super rad BMX riders out of Vegas. This guy, the guy who jumps mini trucks, pianos, who races for factory teams. We've got so much. BMX Hall of Fame member. This is going to be a good show. Tracer, what I want to start out with, and I know Tim's got a bunch of questions as well, but you grew up in a showbiz family. You and I have talked about this, and tell us a little bit about it, a little bit of the background of your family, your dad, Mickey Finn, and I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but no, I take it back. You and I were at Barrett Jackson, and we talked about it, that we think at some point our dads must have crossed, because my dad had met your dad, not in like the show. He'd gone to the show, but your dad had invited him out. And I still have that Mickey Finn, the flat hat. I don't know what they're called. Maybe you can help me there.
Straw hat.
The straw hat with Mickey Finn show, and it's signed by your dad on there. And that was given to my father, who did a lot of work in Vegas back in the 60s and 70s. So these guys, they must have crossed paths a couple time or two.
Yeah, definitely in San Diego, because that's where we all started, and that's your stomping grounds.
Yeah,
but growing up with the show business family I thought it was normal to pick up the phone and order a cheeseburger at the hotel and have room service, or have handfuls of tokens to play any game you want. And we really just, we had the nightclub, so every day on weekends, while they were cleaning up, my brother and I would just hell raise in the place and play hide and seek and tear it up. And then we got to travel with the band, and it was a good time. It was a lot of freedom and a lot of fun, because my dad's a big kid. So we used to jump down to Tijuana, get all the fireworks, load up his car, and then go blow stuff up in the alley behind the nightclub. And we'd play hide and go seek in his nightclub. And if you couldn't find somebody, you'd throw an M80 in their direction in the warehouse. And we got away with murder, BB gun fights, growing up with a hotels, we would grab an end of a toilet paper roll, throw it out the window to see if it would hit the ground. And my dad would say, he'd cover for us. They'd say, "Oh, that's, Mickey Finn's kid, let him go." So we definitely got away with some things, and probably broke a few rules, but late night swimming, jumping on bikes in the pool. It was really interesting until later. I didn't know how cool it was until I started really doing a history check on my family and seeing the people that they rolled with, and a memory of being on a golf course somewhere, and it was Andy Williams' house, and a funny guy that was a goofball with my dad hanging out, and it was Don Knotts and Jerry Lewis and people that he ran with. It was a good time. We spent a lot of times. Do you remember the San Diego Charger cannon by chance?
I don't.
They blow that off at the every time they score a touchdown, and my dad started that.
Really?
And yeah, he used to blow up a cannon and drive an old 29 Packard around with a sign on the back saying "nickel beer" if they win, and if the Chargers win. And it really, really took off. So, but my mom and dad both were just rock stars.
And when did you move to Vegas?
I moved from San Diego to Denver for a year, and then I moved to Vegas in 75.
Okay, 75. Yeah, because I know I went with my parents to see his show in Vegas at one point, and you got to live that life, as you said, where it was the hotel life and all of the ins and outs, the people coming and going, and all of the things. As a kid, that had to be spectacular, because all those hallways, all those people running around, and as you just described it, jumping your bikes into the pools and getting away with Vegas hijinks.
Oh, we left our bikes in valet parking, because even every year, the summers from 67 to 75, we would stay with my dad. My dad was there full time, but he would live in the hotel for free. And we ate all of our meals in the hotel, and we'd leave our bikes in valet parking. We'd come down, they'd have our bikes in valet parking, grab them, go riding around. And Vegas, and it was a lot of desert back then, and we just tore it up. And then, so we did actually get away with murder and ride the bikes. We kept mini bikes in our hotel room when we got mini bikes. It was unheard of.
Damn, if we would have got together back then, Tracer, it would have been murder, because I nowhere near what you had, but like I said, my dad worked in those circles, and I would say to him, like you said, later on when I was older, and I said, "Now, Dad, who was that one lady? She was really loud and laughed kind of cackly." Goes, "Oh, that was Phyllis Diller, yeah." And, we were at dinner with her, or Buddy Hackett, or like, I have probably one of the best stories I have was meeting Elvis Presley at the Hilton, and he gave me a pocket knife. And I distinctly remember that my dad, the general manager, took us up. We went all the way to the top. The elevator opened into the room. And I remember this big guy. And I was a real little kid. And I just remember this big guy. And I remember him going, "Harley, oh my God," and running around, because my dad's name was Harley. I forgot to say that. And running around. And my dad goes, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Got to get the little guy a gift." Because he always had to give people gifts. And he went into his other room, brought me out a pocket knife. I thought my mom took it away from me because I was too young to have a pocket knife, she said. And thank goodness, because as a kid, I would have lost it, right? Well, I thought I had lost it. When my mom passed away last year and I was going through everything, I found that damn pocket knife.
Oh, that's a jewel.
Oh,
what a
man.
Jewel to keep.
It was so awesome. And the only thing I say is, what if we would have had iPhones back then, right? You would have had photos with all those, being at Andy Williams' house and all that cool stuff. It's awesome. And
there would have been evidence, though, too, of all the other things that we did. That's the thing now. We didn't have it. We just have stories, and we didn't really get
very true.
There weren't security cameras on all the buildings and all the places where you were doing your shenanigans at the time either.
Nope.
Casino floor, but not everywhere else, right?
Yep.
So that just sounds like golden time with your dad growing up there and being able to do that. But then you started, getting involved in BMX a little bit more, not just jumping into pools, but you always were a real stylish rider and racer. And, but what was the early days of BMX in Vegas like? Because like you just said, Tracer, it's hotter than hell there right now. But as kids, that's different because I raced around Phoenix and Scottsdale on a BMX bike,
Yeah, I didn't even think twice. I started in San Diego, and then sort of by the time I came to Vegas, I wanted to race motocross. I had a YZ80, and the people that ran the motocross track, here's my little logo here. Our local motocross track ran the BMX track, and my parents wouldn't let me race motorcycles, and they ran the bike track. So we were out there throwing tires for the moto guys, and we earned our keep by helping out the motocross races, and then we get to race BMX. And it was middle of nowhere, no water fountain all day long. Shadow Creek Golf Course, way out off Craig Road Speedway, is where the site was. Middle of nowhere,
a long ways from town.
It was. Yeah, the freeway didn't go. It was all side streets, and it was hillbilly to say the least. And the Williams really did a good job. I don't even know how we all survived. It's a funny story because Mikey Aguilera, his family are golden here in town, and I think they had a burrito wagon. And they would come up with because they had
burrito wagon. You mean like they had burritos?
Yeah, they sold burritos. Okay. Yeah, and I don't recall if it was just a camper and they just set out front, but that was the only food at the track was the Aguileras, and you maybe there was no snack bar, and it was hot, and then you'd be out there. We did 5 motos. We ran 5 with 10, 12 people a moto, 5 scores, and it took a while to get. It wasn't like 2 motos and out. You spent the day out there and you were toast. No sunblock, no thought of shade, and that was it.
That now, what's funny? You said you had your motorcycle, but you couldn't race. I think we all started out kind of that way. Tim, what kind of bike did you have back in the day when we first started out?
It was a YZ80, and you had to get one too. I remember that. We got them about the same time. And our friend Steve Goodnight, he had an XR75, and we would just rip around the neighborhoods on those things. We had 3 or 4 favorite, we lived on the edge of town, on the west side of town, and so there were cornfields and ravines with jumps and all these great adventurous places to go ride to. And we had to run from the county sheriff a few times, but
that's for sure.
We never actually officially raced motocross, but we had a lot of great times.
Me neither, but don't you guys feel like riding motocross made you, when you were jumping your bike, you weren't scared?
Oh, absolutely, man.
It just changed your mental state where you just thought, oh, well, the worst thing can happen is I'm gonna hit the ground before I hit the ground and the bike could land on me. And so do you think that's why you guys could jump? I love watching your original videos you have all that footage and all those pictures. That's priceless. Nobody captures that kind of stuff.
You know what? We are real lucky because Tim and I one of us always had a camera in our hand, didn't we, Tim?
Oh yeah. I mean, my dad was a photographer. My grandparents were photographers. So I always had a camera, and I mean, it's so wonderful that we captured all the things we talk about, like, when we first met, and the riding trails that we went to. And, it's just, I've got folders upon folder and file drawers full of great images.
Hey,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're the guest.
Oh, I was going to say, in your timelines on everything, you didn't just say, oh, in this track, this 16-year-old kid built. You'd say, hit this track, and here's the picture of it. And here it just, your timelines, they work because the history is written, and photograph. That was impressive. I wish we
you.
didn't think what we were doing was that cool, and nobody had a camera, and the only pictures we have were by accident or somebody's parent who was in your moto.
Well, I mean, I just happen to have a photo, which you've probably seen, Tracer, of me racing side hacks with Bryhop. And the only reason I have that is because I was racing Rancho, and there used to be a guy out there who took photos at the tabletop of everybody, and he would sell these little viewers, these little plastic viewer things.
Yes.
And I went, oh, I wonder if he got me. And I went back and he did. And I was like, oh my, otherwise I would never have that photo because, nobody was there to take that photo. Tim wasn't in San Diego. And that was cool. But since you brought this up, Tracer, did you get to see the video that went with our second episode with Mike Miranda, the intergalactic Wichita match race? Did you get to see that one?
And I like the announcer saying, having to explain to the kids, yeah, this guy used to race here back in the olden days. It's like, it's funny because you were having, and even that, the era with your jackets that you guys talked about on your show, you were wearing the jacket. You were wearing a lumberjack shirt, Tim, and then Mike from Cali was wearing a little short sleeve. I couldn't figure out if it was 50 degrees or 100.
Well, Miranda stripped down, man. He got serious. He had his Vision jacket on and everything. He stripped down and got all into it. And I thought, looking back at it, it's really funny because I realized that Mike was over like in lane 6 next to Tim. And then all of a sudden he went, oh, wait a minute. There's nobody telling us what lane to get in. And he hustled over to like lane 1, and it didn't matter anyway because, he had only been out of racing pro for maybe 6 months. Tim, when had you raced previously to that?
I didn't race like competitively until 84, 85. And so it'd been a couple of years for me. I
hadn't raced competitively since 84 and almost literally hadn't even been on a bike, as you can tell, as how out of shape I was. And because I was working all the time. But it was Tracer, it was just so much fun to find that footage. We talked about it on the show, and all of a sudden a light bulb went on, and I went, I think I actually have that somewhere, because I have boxes of stuff like from the Grands that we filmed, because I always had a cameraman with me in the Vision days. And I have like
that's smart
pipe action at the GPV at the Tramway in Palm Springs. And, and Tim has the equipment to convert that stuff and make it digital. And that's what's so awesome.
I was just looking at the book, Concrete and Smog.
Yeah.
And I think I'd say almost every one of the last 10 pages is that contest. And it's so well branded. And then my buddy Gary Lawrence, just total look back, rad shot. And I thought, boy, look at how the branding was amazing. It was, like you said, as big as Vans. And I didn't know about the global stuff because I was obviously just from the US, but I learned a lot from that.
It was fun days, really fun days. So I want to get right back into Tracer Finn, because we're not here to talk about our photos and stuff like that. We want to talk about Tracer and find out more and dive into that. So you started racing locally. The racing scene started getting a little bit more aggressive. We're starting to see touring teams and things get a little bit more, I guess we could say, organized. Is that a good way of saying it, in Vegas? Yeah. And so where does it go next? Because we know you finally end up Factory CW, and we know that you have a lot to do with the bike industry even after Factory CW days. So fill us in.
Well, we started out there doing rubber band starts, and then we actually, of course, the first 2 ABA Grands were 6 miles from my house and at Horseman's Park. And I went there both years. I raced it once, and I found somebody posted a picture, and I was in the background, and I went, oh, I guess I raced it, but not as competitive back then. We were still sort of rubber band starts, and the only guys that were really killing it were like Mike Aguilera, and heck, 16X and 16 Novice was locals as well, winners of those classes. So, it's people started coming through, and then we got Desert Surf for the NBA track. And once Desert Surf came in, and it was right next to that skateboard park, it was just the best place to grow up riding, because we'd have bike nights, and we'd race, and then we'd jump over and ride in the skate park, and then of course we jumped the fence every time we needed to ride. But we would just kill it at the track. Everybody would travel through and race Vegas, and we had the Winter Nationals, and first couple of years there, it was one of the favorite races for people to come, and their families really found out that they could have a good time. Those parents, you talk about the dad in the infield with the beer can. Hey, you can go to a casino, gamble, and have a beer, and leave your kid at the track. So that was really good and healthy for the town. And I started. We did some research for Desert Surf with Ron Hagwood. His dad started that, and so I got to go to California with him quite often, and they were learning about skate parks and tracks and chasing points. So I got to go, and really didn't do a ton until I turned 16, when I got my driver's license, and then I just hopped in my truck, and like no air conditioning. That wasn't even all I thought about.
Was this your mini truck that I remember you having?
Yes, this was my red one. It was a 69 Datsun 1200 cc 4-speed, up those they were long trips, and as long as I could put my bike in back, that was how I rolled, and just started traveling and racing against the good guys. It took me a while to get up to speed. I could but I always did the jumping, and you guys said that's what we love to do, and got noticed a little bit, and started making those mains and snapping off some pretty good finishes here and there. So sort of when I was 16, that's when I would really travel, at least regionally.
I mean, that was a big part of BMX, especially back in those days, because if you were a stylish jumper, you got recognition in the magazines, and you got photo shoots in the magazines. You might even be asked to do some bike tests. It's like, I remember Cody Smart was our bike test guy at Bicycles and Dirt, because we saw him at some Texas races, and he always had style. And so he got lots more publicity. And when you look back, that was one of your things. And you know what? We might as well come right into it, because I hear that piano playing out on the sidewalk right now, dude. I mean, one of the most famous shots in BMX lore is that one of you jumping your dad out in front of the hotel. And that hotel was the Stratosphere? Is that what it was?
Real close to there, the Union Plaza.
Union Plaza, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's got the marquee where Oz timed it just perfect, because nowadays somebody would shoot it and they'd go, we'll just put that in Photoshop. We'll just add it in. But tell us about that. You had timed that thing just right. And I've looked at that photo so many times. You are so high. I know you've told me, and you've told it before, about that you landed flat, but dude, your feet are off the pedals.
Yeah. I mean, I did it twice. I jumped it twice, and I had no idea, because there was a curb there. Anyway, we were planning on doing, Bob came up, and when I finally got my factory ride, because up until that point, I had never, ever been in BMX Action, because I was always Levi's and a Mickey Fincho jersey. That was my sponsor. I never jumped into any co-sponsor deals or anything that would maybe lead to a factory ride, because I was happy riding for my dad, and it was fun, and it was family, and I'd never saw the big picture. I didn't really travel that much. It was regional, and we were just advertising for his show. And so when I finally got on CW and had the full kit, he Bob asked me to do a photo shoot, and we were going to jump Caesars, and we went over to Caesars and tried to reenact the jump in the fountains with Evel Knievel.
Really?
And,
That's cool.
yeah, and it bombed because I would land in just a little box jump, and I would land in the water, and it was so slimy that I would just crash. And that's that he knew that it wasn't good. And we came home, and him and my dad had hit it off because they were just collectors. They collected antiques. They were into cars. They just really, really hit it off. And my dad and I had talked about doing that jumping the piano in the show already.
Oh, during the show?
Yes, we had because I'd run Spotlight, and he'd introduced me, and so we had talked about figuring out a way of jumping the piano, landing on stage, and so we had already had that half baked, just as a gag in the show. And we talked to Bob, and him and my dad were chatting it up and said, let's do it. We just rebel runned it in the morning. We went out and rolled that piano out from backstage and got everybody together. They thought it was a movie shoot. We shut down Fremont Street and knocked it out. And it was 2 4x8 sheets of plywood.
I was just going to ask you what the ramp was. Yeah.
Yeah. The first one was to a sawhorse, and the second one was straight to the piano. So it was just click, click. And my buddy David Saxton was a carpenter kind of guy, worked with his dad. He came with me, and he bolted that together with engineering from the hotel. And boy, just all those people in the shot were just thought they were filming an episode of Vegas or something. So I hit it, and I had no idea how far I had to jump, and I just blew it, just landed and just blasted off my bike, and my bike went into the crowd. And Bob talked me down. He said, all right, go, tuck a little bit. And he actually said, I was frazzled with excitement. I was so excited. And it was literally like an Evel Knievel moment. I was like, I had to commit. You can't see your landing. You have to jump over. My dad's sort of ducking, and we didn't know what was going to happen. So the second time I just tucked, and of course, once you hit the jump, you know how to take it. So, and that second one did not have the fear of God in my eyes. And, but later on, Gork gave me a couple of proofs of the second jump. So I'd only seen the one that made the magazine.
Yeah.
So, that came together. And
how did you like the second one compared to the first one?
Oh, it looked cool, but I wouldn't put it up there with how it's gotten traction.
And I think you told me the marquee wasn't right either, right?
Right. It was a reader board. And he timed that reader board where it said Mickey Finn Show, because the other jump doesn't have, say, the Mickey Finn Show. So
now let me ask you something. Now, this is where I like to get behind a little bit and dig in is, okay, there's all the people in the photo, and there's the showgirls and your dad. And now, how many of those people were drug out there? And was that your dad? Hey, come on, we're going to go out and shoot this. Or was it Oz going, hey, I need some color? Or, what was that about? Or do you even know, because you were focused on jumping?
No, that's a great question, because 100% family affair. If my dad's playing piano, to his left, the girl that's pointing up, that's my stepmom.
Okay.
So she's wearing like a gymnastics outfit.
So she's the one who gets you IDs to get into clubs.
Yes. Yeah. She's only 12 years older than me. And so that was to his left, and to his right, the woman with the banjo was my brother's girlfriend.
Oh.
And she was in the show. But if you look, and it's a funny thing is, if you look at that picture, she has a cast on. So she wasn't working because she had carpal tunnel or broke her wrist. So she's standing there and she has a cast on, a banjo player, which isn't going to work. But if you look at those little things, the gal on the left of the picture is my stepmom, and the gal on the right is my brother's girlfriend. And everybody else were just people that stopped and literally thought we were filming a movie.
Those were just tourists.
Yes, all of them were tourists.
Here's where things have changed, you guys. Nowadays, there'd be somebody out there with a clipboard going, okay, I just need you to sign this release. I need you to sign this release because it's for, or there'd have to be a big sign at each end that said, if you're standing here, you are giving up your rights to, to appear in this production or whatever. Where back then, Oz just shot it and put it in the magazine. And it was,
there might have been, protesters with signs for different causes.
Yeah.
Down with bicycles.
Wait, what do you mean? Legal would have been out there from the Union Plaza going, what, you want to do what? No. This isn't going to happen. So what a simpler time and good time. And so you finish up the jump, you ride out of it, you circle back. What was Oz's reaction? Did he go, yeah, I got the shot? Or was he like, oh my God, that was just the most bitchin' shot ever?
I don't remember the verbiage, but I had never had much interaction with them. So because I never got in the magazine because I always had Levi. So I'd never done a photo shoot actually with him. And he was pretty stoked. And I thought, okay, this guy's pumped. And there was a vintage get together where I don't want to say they roasted him, but they had him up on stage and Windy and it was a really neat event down in California. And I waited in line and I had the magazine for him to sign. So I got him to sign the magazine and I waited in line and I was almost embarrassed because we just locked and we had never talked about that moment again. And we were just giggling like two little kids. And we were going over those stories because like anything, there's three sides to every story. Like he has things he has to overlook to get that shot. So I loved hearing his opinion on things and how it came together. And, even more so what he used, because we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how high, how low, how it was going to travel, how it was going to land. If he was, I didn't focus. Okay, there's the camera. I just did it to stay alive, and I think that captured that fear. That's what's cool is we all known that moment when you're over your head, and it was definitely one of those moments. And I got up and we knocked it out again. But
Tracer, there's a term for that, it's called balls to the wall. So.
Yeah. I do it again. I have both my knees replaced now. And when I crashed, my dad was actually, it hurt his feelings, like they're in show business gear. And he's like, hey, my kid just ate dookie and is laying in the street, with, looked like a crime scene. And so, there was a lot of emotion, and it's a great question. No, I actually have the beer keg from that shot.
The one that your dad's sitting on?
Yeah, it's 5 feet behind me.
That's cool.
I brought it back. He lives in Delaware, and I shined it up and refurbished it, and it's in my office.
That's nice. Now that beer keg was his piano bench, right?
Yes. Yeah. They sold so much alcohol at the nightclub. All these things there's t-shirts from the nightclub. These are all albums.
That's great. I should have worn my hat tonight, man. I really blew it.
I have it. I have one over here and it's signed by, I think 9 people, and it's the original band. And the only 2 people that are still kicking is my mom and dad. Wow. So I have it in a glass case, and it's awesome. It's signed originally. So those are keepers.
Yeah.
And it's a tremendous memento to me. And my mom's pretty awesome too. So I've been collecting and trying to do, like, behind me, trying to have all their stuff and have it displayed, and let them, they'll come up here for Thanksgiving and sit in the chair, and the grandkids will be looking at these pictures and they're telling stories, and the stuff they did was definitely off the hook. But that shot was a cool day, and definitely launched me into people's bedrooms, I guess, which hopefully doesn't sound weird.
Now, you said something that kind of made me think. You said you were laying in the street and it looked like a crime scene. We always talk about the jump. We always talk about landing flat, but what happened after you land? Did you biff? Did you just go head over heels, or what happened? Took out 10 tourists?
Yes, actually, I landed on my back wheel and just peeled off the back of my bike. I still had it, and just, you know how you just never let go, and I just peeled off and went, and my bike bounced and went forward, and as soon as I hit my knees, I'm already now let go, put my hands out, and my bike hits one bounce and goes into the crowd. So it was like, people caught it, or else it would have gone in the California hotel. And I just, hit and went to my knees, because I know I was definitely bruised, and they hurt really bad. But I went to my knees, and then down, chest slide on the asphalt. And then, the next one was just I knew how hard to hold on and how much I needed to tuck. And it was still a pretty big jump, like the second time to flat, but at least I knew I knew what I was needed to do.
You knew what to expect.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? And that could be good or bad, but what it makes me think, Tim and I, we enacted and instigated so many photo shoots for ABA and Bicycles and Dirt. And remember, Tim, how we would tell somebody, and Tim, did you just have an earthquake a couple of minutes ago? I saw the camera moving around like this. And
I mean, it's starting to slip out of its little mount.
Oh, it's exciting stories. But I mean, Tim, do you remember what the famous words of our photo shoots were?
Famous words?
Yeah. And John Carr's notorious for it. Oz is notorious for it. We were too. Just one more time. And
like with Mike Polson, when he was riding through the cactus trails, just one more.
Mike had jumping cactus in his pants, and but we would ask people to do things for the shot. And you think of, just like you're saying, Tracer, what you did for the shot. But from there, when that issue came out, it made a huge difference, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Because I got on CW, and I was sort of a regional guy. And I got on CW as almost like a sideshow. I could jump. I got quite a few photos, full page photos, and just for, and I might not even have made the main that day, at Irvine, or, some of these other events that they'd have a jumping contest, or there'd be a jump between motos, or, something fun, sort of like the famous Chandler Gap with Bob Sensabaugh, like that one is just sticks in my mind. Is that guy gets the stamp of approval as far as I'm concerned. I don't even know how many times I raced him, but I know how cool his jumping was between motos, and so that when that hit, I don't want to say I went from a sideshow, but I was definitely not Billy Griggs or Mike Miranda, or Debbie, who was national number one. And we had some quality like winners. But I think it made the team more well-rounded, because we sort of had a traveling show. Before freestyle, we had a we would go somewhere, and it's sort of like picking up where Mike left off, where he'd get rad and people would watch and they'd want to watch your race too. So, it got a little better here and there, made some good racing, I guess, leaps and bounds with getting to travel and go back east and race these monsters back east. But that definitely put me on the map for sort of the BMX, that era. Many people say, I have that in my bedroom wall. Even local people like that
Yeah, cool
had
shot.
met me. Yeah, so
That's something it should be in museums, and it's just that's a classic BMX shot from that era. I mean, it's just got that cool factor.
Do you still have that bike?
No, I gave every bike away like you. I pretty much just have a few things, pads here and there. I had my helmet. Somebody gave it back to me, I think, and a few things here and there. But I wasn't that factory. I had to pay for my own gas, and I would get contingency. I wasn't on salary or anything. So I would sell the extra Vans, and I'd sell my old frame or my pants, and $20 here and there.
Story of so many riders. Yeah. The extra t-shirts that you had still. And well, we have a surprise for you, because we found that bike and Tim restored it. And that thing is amazing. So we sold it for $10,000 and we split the money. And, we'd like to say we're giving it to you, but we needed the cash.
Oh, that's all right.
What though? Go ahead.
Well, there's one other photo that I wanted to talk about, and because of my technical issues tonight, I can't show it, but there's another really cool shot, Tracer, I wanted to ask you about, and it says it's parting shot, and it's like from behind, and you're jumping, and a bunch of the crowd, a bunch of kids and spectators would be below you. Tell us about that photo.
Is that a one-hander shot, Tim? Is that the one?
It's a one-hander shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike Aguirre really gave me some props for that. We were just jumping between motos at Irvine, at the ABA race in Irvine, and there was a rad jump, and these guys were killing it, and I just so wanted to be a part of it. And I was jumping, and somebody came up and said, "You need a helmet to be in the magazine." And I was, that tells you how much I was just doing it for fun. We don't wear our helmets when we go jumping. And so somebody gave me a helmet, and I was trying to do 360s, and I'm completely pointing the other way. And I sort of sprocket rubbed the kids when I landed, and there's some fear in their eyes. And Mike Aguirre gave me some props about being from Vegas and trying one-handed 360s. And, by the time you'd land, it wasn't groundbreaking. There was a lot of kids doing stuff like that, but maybe not as public. So like you, we would practice into rock piles, which now I
anywhere.
Yeah. So, but that picture it was the first time I got the name on it, and I did a couple one-hander, one-footers. I got a lot of traction from that day. Actually, it became, I think it was in Action Now, and then it was in BMX Plus, and then it turned out to be in the Vans 50th anniversary book as a centerfold.
Cool.
So my foot's out, and it that day, I would say, I don't know about that jump, but that day was epic, because 100% was just doing it for the fans. And there's people in the background just, I don't even know if you look really close, my brake cable comes out and then it's tucked back into my pad, because my back wheel was so bent that you couldn't even ride it with the brakes rubbing. So I just took the brakes off and stuck it in my pad. So that jump, if you look at the picture, cables stuffed in the pad just because the wheel's so bent. And it was probably semis coming up.
Now I'm gonna have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, you'll see. Definitely, I was definitely mean to my bikes. It was a Anderson Avalanche with a Euro bottom bracket and turning cranks. It was not a jump bike.
So what you're saying is you had a shock bike with no shocks.
Yeah, I was just burr, like riding Z rims.
Z rims.
So that shot was before you were on CW then?
Yeah, I just turned 16 because I remember driving down there, and they used the advertising for Thanksgiving or something in Action Now. So, the 3-month lag, I just turned 16. So I started going to every race that I could. So, I think I'm wearing Levi's and a t-shirt and a borrowed helmet. And it just turned out, thanks for bringing that up. Cause that's the real fun. That was, when I look at that shot, I smile.
You've mentioned a couple times Action Now. We talk about BMX Action all the time. Action Now was so ahead of its time, and it had skateboarding, BMX, it had downhill racing, it had GPV, surfing. It was like the whole snapshot of action sports, but it just couldn't do it because it was just too far ahead of its time. And I loved Action Now. I've got all the back issues and I thumb through it every once in a while.
Yeah. Dean Bradley was a great photographer. And I learned over time how plugged in he was with all of those, like yourself. People don't know that your history with ABA and with what you brought to the table, because they don't see who edited the magazine, and they don't see who said, hey, like I liked when you were talking about what it took to build the tracks and everything. And it's the behind the scenes stuff, like Dean did, is, taping a camera to his helmet. And we're talking
about Dean Bradley.
Yeah.
And Dean was, and he was such a cool guy, such a fun guy to hang out with back in the day. And we still kind of go back and forth on Instagram, and it's fun to share photos and like that. But, I want to pull something out of an interview that I heard. I think it was Dirty Knobs, because you and Tim have a very, very big thing in common from your racing days. You mentioned your first CW race pants that you got from Miranda and why you wore Gators. And maybe you can start telling about that, and Tim will know exactly what I'm talking about when you explain this. They
gave me a saber plate at Corona. Mike introduced me to CW, gave me a saber plate, and with no promise of anything, I was like, hey, free number plate. And,
anything free, man.
Yeah. And I was racing a Pepsi Challenge or something up in Fresno or Bakersfield, and they were on their way to an ABA race in Washington or somewhere. And they actually knew I was going to the race and came by and gave me, the race was right off the freeway. They dropped off CW racing pants and a CW long sleeve t-shirt with the CW on the pocket and on the sleeves. And that was, I guess, the start of the sponsorship. But Mike and I are not the same height. And I probably had a foot of floods. So when people say, oh, Gators weren't styling, I go, well, do you want to see my stripes on my socks? Or do you want to see my Gators? So I wore Gators because I never could, until the gear pants came along, nobody had the length. They just, whatever waist they were a standard length. So that's how I got into Gators, was just, I'm tired of having floods and everybody looking at my socks.
Tim, do you see the connection here?
You're probably talking about those first race pants that we bought.
Tim and I bought race pants, and then the next year we grew so much, that. Go ahead, Tim.
My mom, she sews, and she actually sewed extensions on to the bottom of those race pants. For me, I don't know if she did yours too.
She did mine too, but but you grew out of yours like right away, because Tim was a lot
Yeah.
taller than I was. And I mean, we showed up at a race and his pants were just like what you were talking about. Because you know what people, they say now, they go, oh, why don't you just get new pants? It's like, dude, we were lucky to have the race pants we had, and when you grew out of them. So we've got these photos of us and we've got these blue race pants. His mom didn't have any blue fabric, so she sewed red on the bottom. And it was like we had built-in Gators, dude. I mean,
Yeah, we were ahead of the curve.
Nice.
Oh, it was the best. Yeah. But Tim always had a problem with that.
And Tim, I want to thank you for the homage to my dad on your number plate at Dirty Fest with that.
Oh, can you see it there?
Yeah. Well, when I see the show, I look at it and people, the deal with those Mickey Finn stickers was if you got in a magazine with those on and you got a picture, you got to see my dad's show, you and your whole family or your group, for free.
Those stickers are great. I have like 2 original Mickey Finn stickers.
That's awesome.
I made some smaller ones for Dirty Fest and for Frogtown.
That's so cool.
Love them.
Yeah. Doug Williams made me some, and I give them away every time I can.
Is that a trademark infringement, Tracer, or is he okay?
No, but it's funny when you try and get something printed off a magazine and somebody says, do you have the signatures to have that?
You have the rights to do
photo.
This?
Yeah, the rights. And you go, dude, this is 40 years old. I think, I just want the picture bigger,
Yeah, exactly.
I can't see the lettering. So, but that's.
So BMX racing in Vegas, it kept growing.
Yes.
Do you remember the race at Cashman Field?
Yes.
I like to bring a lot of these stories that you raced at, because I remember you racing there. And Tim, I don't remember. Were you still at ABA when we raced at Cashman? I think you had just left, hadn't you?
I don't remember that Cashman.
It was a big baseball stadium.
Yeah, no, I didn't do that. I ran a couple of other like Gold Cups there when I was with ABA.
Oh, we have a Gold Cup to talk about too. Yeah. It's that Gold Cup's going to be a thumbs up. But Cashman Field, do you remember the track at all? Do you remember anything distinctive about that?
I remember everything because I bought a house later right by Cashman Field because they were doing a refurbish of the neighborhood. So they built that stadium for the 51s. And I forget who they were the farm team for. So it was a really nice facility. And
it was beautiful.
I almost want to throw it back to you guys, but it was, the jumps were hay and then dirt over the hay bales. They were hay bales. And then the corners were flat, slick corners, and it got a lot of track out there. But having a BMX race on a groomed baseball field, I heard that somebody had to write a check.
Let's just say we bought part of Cashman Field, and this is what I'm getting, because these are the stories that never get told, and because ABA didn't want to tell them, and it's not a bad story. It's just part of BMX and what happened. But so this was when I was the vice president of ABA, and Clayton was the president, and Clayton and I have talked about this, and it was just what you said. We got there. There was this beautiful turf baseball field, and I mean, it was perfect. And I said, where are we putting the track in? And Clayton goes, right there. And I go, right there? And he goes, yeah, we got this guy. A guy named Jerry Serber introduced us to him. Jerry used to do all the trophies for the Nationals. And he goes, he's done some of the big supercrosses. They do them in stadiums. And he's got it all down so that we can start racing in these stadiums. I go, wow, this is great. And so So Bill Starlin, Galen Starlin's dad, and I were building the tracks at that time, and the dump trucks are scheduled to be coming in, and this truck pulls up, a flatbed, and it was visqueen, just that heavy black plastic. And so the very first thing they do is cover the entire baseball field with black plastic. Now, first of all, the cost of the black plastic alone was a fortune, but then 2 semi-truckloads of hay bales come in. You nailed it. I love that intro because you were like, yeah, the hay bales. And so then we had all the guys come out and they broke open the hay bales and they covered the black plastic. That was supposed to be, according to the expert, the plastic protected the turf. And then so it wouldn't rut it and like that, the straw was supposed to make all the dirt move. You know, think of one of these big city buildings in downtown LA that are on rollers, so that when an earthquake comes, they're supposed to move back and forth. The entire track was supposed to be floating on top of the plastic. So we put straw down, then more plastic down, then the dirt starts getting delivered. Okay, we build the track. Everything's supposed to be good, except for there was so much straw that in places, and I don't know if you remember this, Tracer, in turns and like that, no matter how thick we made the dirt, the straw would start coming up through and it would start getting slick, and guys were complaining. And but we were on Friday, the first motos, and Clayton and I get summoned up to the thing up in the top of the stadium. And now, trust me, we're not into Saturday. We're not into Sunday. We're into the very first day. And we get up there, and it's the general manager and the groundskeeper. And they both have their arms crossed, and they're like, "You've ruined our stadium." And we're like, "Excuse us? What?" And they go, "We've already started an investigation, and we're looking at it." These guys had gone out the night and lifted some of the plastic. Clayton and I pretty much figured they let us come there because they wanted a new turf, and they just found some suckers to buy it. And I mean, we had to pay for all new turf and a whole bunch of irrigation. So that national definitely didn't make any money because it was a mess. When we pulled it up, I don't know whoever had this idea, to be honest, because what happens when you put plastic and dirt on top of, 85, 90 degree weather on top of green grass? What happens? What do you think?
Kills it anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. It was all dead. It was all dead. And, but you know what was cool? They had that
scoreboard.
So cool scoreboard. Yes. And remember, they'd put up the riders, and all the Wheaties logo and all the stuff, and we could scan in photos of the riders, and that scoreboard that thing was wicked. That thing was awesome.
And it was perfectly placed where if you took a picture from the infield, or like say home plate out towards the first corner or the first straight, you could frame that whole marquee up there. And it was cool. It was all like dot matrix. Like it was all
exactly.
It was definitely not. It was
old school, quality. Man.
Yeah.
And it was just so cool. Great. It made it seem like the Super Bowl of BMX or something, It seemed really cool. How did you do at that race?
I think I got third or fourth. No, I got second. I got second in B Pro. So that was I turned pro by then. So it was definitely B Pro.
So that was a big event for you just in your career, because now you were racing pro, you did well, and that was cool.
Yeah. And, I bought some pictures from Gork, all those photos you guys took. And the memories of that is just, hey, I might have done well, but I have some really, really great pictures with Gators on. And coming into that first corner was just blue groove. And I was used to the dirt anyway,
the dirt
that was
there
just
in Vegas.
That was just the just a turn anywhere. And it was it was home cooking. Every time there's home cooking, like every time there was something big. I love that the Gold Cups were all in, for years, people don't remember the first two grands in Vegas, and then the Gold Cup finals were always in Vegas. And it just, or at least for a few years, I loved home cooking. I love people coming to Vegas, and because if unless they bought a magazine, they never really saw the racing.
Yeah, it was your home turf, so you had everybody there and all your buddies. Now, let's talk about the Gold Cup. But before we do, I just want to let everybody know, Tim just texted me. We did lose him. He's having all these technical issues. He's kind of bummed out because he really wanted to be in on this interview with you. He had a bunch of stuff to ask, but I'll ask some of his questions for him. But let's talk about that Gold Cup. Was that the Gold Cup finals where that happened, or was it just a qualifier? It was the finals, wasn't it?
It was the finals at the Speedway.
Yeah.
In 84.
Okay, because here's what I remember about it, and you've never heard my side of it. Denny Griffiths and I were on the infield shooting, and I stood right there and watched it happen. I was on the turn, I was set up, and I was watching through the lens, and I believe somewhere in the archives there's a photo of you coming into the turn, and I shot the photos, and I remember you went down, and I remember your hand went out. It wasn't like you tumbled, you kind of stuck your hand out, and I didn't know anything happened. I stood up, and Denny said, "Oh no." And I said, "What?" He goes, "I'm not sure, but," because you kind of continued, you kind of continued into your motion, and he goes, "I think Tracer caught his hand in that guy's chain." And I went, "What? Oh man." And then you got up and you were holding your hand. And I remember Mike, I can't remember Mike's last name, but Mike was one of the district reps, that officiated at the races, but he was a district rep during the regular time. And I remember him walking out onto the track and saying, "Oh yeah, there's something out here." And so just how was that from your perspective? And then tell everybody the end result.
Yeah. I think by then I was working shows. I worked Kenny Rogers' show the night before. So, working late, and I was working full time by then, but the race was in Vegas. So I just jump in and race B Pro or whatever you call it, single A. And I came into that corner, and the first corner, and remember they did Moto Money? Remember the Moto Money?
Yep.
So that just popped in my head. But side note there. But I came in the corner, and you could carve it inside with your foot out, but there was this poofy white dirt on the outside, which was actually the berm.
Vegas
and
dirt.
I don't think I even got to practice much. And I came in hot, so I continued up to hit the berm and come off it. And it was actually my buddy, Joe LaMarche, tucked inside of me and hit my front wheel and sort of hit my elbow. So my hand went, my bars went sideways and my hand just flew out because bars went sideways. And then I sort of flew over the bars, and I had those 09 wrap gloves.
Oh yeah.
09. Yeah. So the one time I have gloves that are just locked on. And so when my hand flew out, it went on his left side of his right side of his wheel. And we've talked about it a couple of years ago. I finally got to get all the specifics from him, and it actually went in the spokes, and where the spokes crossed, it pulled it tight, went around the wheel, and then my hand got caught at his brakes, and
you were in the crisscross of the spokes, not the chain ring or the
correct.
Chain. Okay.
Yeah, and it had gone around, and my hand hit the chain stays and stopped, but that was still like stripped. It just stripped it,
Mm-hmm.
so it pulled it off. So when I
I say, but I don't know, and I don't want to know. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So when I it pulled it off slow, and it just was that stinging moment, and then I, no surprise here, I just grabbed my hand, and it looked like Julia Child's. They've rebuilt it a little bit, but the bone was still there. They had just stripped the whole finger off, and like wire strippers, and it's just, I won't be specific, but it was
I just
gross.
remember you holding your hand and just thinking, oh man, what just happened? It was.
I told the turn official, get my finger, in a few more colorful words. And I said, get my finger, get my finger. And so he looked around, and then they ended up stopping the races. Like, we can't find his finger. And so they called back the moto, and it was in Joe's back wheel. And so technically I should have got moto money, because I got second.
Yeah, you should have.
Yeah, should have got a little bit. So they ended up.
Wait a minute. Is this a Ronnie Anderson story? I mean, a crazy Ronnie story where you have money owed?
Oh yeah, it was. I have a folder of $7. I think I won for a moto, and I'm like, hey man, that would get me 150 miles, and so they put me in the ambulance, and then somehow somebody got a hold of my dad, and we met at the hospital, and they just took and cut the bone off with a pair of dikes.
Really?
And it was, so they just numbed my hand, and then cut the bone down. It was 3 of the loudest snips.
Wow.
And my dad was holding my arm, and they just snipped it, sewed it up, and I actually worked the next night. I worked Monday night.
And it's true that your dad was crying, he'll never be a piano player.
It's funny you say that, because my dad and I were making jokes. Like, literally, my dad's the coolest dude. And he said, you get 10% off manicures now. And, that kind of stuff. But there's a fact that not a lot of people know, but my dad started playing piano because he got his finger cut off.
Really?
Yes. So he went those mix mashers for mashed potatoes. He stuck his finger in to get a finger like you get peanut butter, and it cut his finger off, and it was just hanging, and they sewed it back together and said, if you don't exercise it, you'll lose it.
Wow, and that's amazing.
My great aunt bought him a piano, and when he was like, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. I don't know exactly.
That'd be great to keep the dexterity. Yeah. Yeah.
So he would, after dinner, he'd play piano just to keep his finger. So we kidded that it's hereditary. And so both my dad and I have both had our fingers cut off at different times. And he definitely got to be a good piano player. And he stuck with
it for the nickel beers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He sold some beers.
So I want to dispel a rumor, or not dispel a rumor, but it is true that the remainder of your finger is bronzed and in the BMX Hall of Fame, isn't it?
I actually wish I would have. I'm the kind of guy that if they would have let me, because I had to sign paperwork to throw it away.
Yeah.
Get rid of a body part or whatever, which was weird. And
dude, I think we need to 3D print some and sell them as necklaces. Okay.
We'll
split that. We'll put that together.
I would have, if just to freak out my friends, if I could have had that in a little jar, I would have, but my friends have made me hooks and thimbles and, funny add-ons. And, I get a ton of mileage out of this.
Your nickname around ABA was, right?
9.5?
Fingerless Finn.
Oh, yeah. Is it? Oh, good.
But no, I think we should do bronze ones, and put BMX Hall of Fame on one side, Tracer Finn on the other, and it'd be great. It'd be great.
like rabbit's foot keychains, just
exactly
with a chain on it. There we go.
What macabre humor we have. But the other thing is, so you raced, you did all your stuff, you were factory CW, you finally made it up to the factory rider status. But let's jump, because we're we're going to run out of, we got about 10 minutes here left. And there's so much more I want to hit, but we've talked about famous family, living in Vegas, being a Vegas rider. But now let's talk about your after BMX, your days with, I call them the Tiger Kings. I know they're not, but with Siegfried and Roy. I mean, how did you land that job? Was that through connections through your dad, or just because you'd been doing lighting and learning more and more? How'd that happen?
Yeah, I'll be quick with it. While I was doing racing, I obviously wasn't going to be a moneymaker pro guy. So I always did lighting for my dad's show, and we put a show in the Imperial Palace. So I was working my dad's show, and the Golden Nugget Hotel, Steve Wynn's place, was opening up a new tower for their star, and they had 2 new showrooms. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, they're hiring downtown." So I went down there 40 years ago this year, and I was 19, and they hired me on the spot. And not a lot of people had carbon arc fall spot chops, which I did. I was definitely a motivated kid, and I worked my dad's show for a while, well, my whole childhood. And then being Mickey Finn's kid wasn't cool to the other crew. They would always sort of treat me like the boss's kid.
Yeah.
And so I went out on my own and got a job at the Golden Nugget and started doing everything from I lit Baryshnikov and I had lighting chops and knew how to run the computers back then. It was a Kliegel Performer. It was all kept on a cassette. Mm-hmm. And so I would record the shows, and I had some youthful chops and good timing. So I started doing shows, and then I ended up working my way up to being lighting director at the Golden Nugget. And I did all the Sinatra and Lou Rawls, and then big shows like Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton.
You're kind of just passing this off as it was just like, oh yeah, I just did this. But lighting like that is critical to a show. If it's not spot on, it can not only ruin the show, but it can throw the performers off, right?
Yeah, we did Baryshnikov, and it was $5,000 a plate dinner.
For those of you who don't know, Baryshnikov, a very famous ballet
dancer guy.
Dancer, yeah.
Yeah. And, I had to make it so he could spot his spins. And, I learned along the way. And then after about 5-6 years, Wynn was going to open the Mirage. And I went over early and I interviewed. They brought me over as like a, technical guru kind of guy that already was getting paid by the hotel. So I helped build the show, and then Siegfried and Roy, and then I worked my way up to be the lighting director at Siegfried and Roy, and did all their. They had a lighting design, but then I would come in and work with if we'd add new things to the show and light illusions, and got to learn a lot. Did Vegas Vacation, did City Slickers, got to do movies, and got some credits here and there. So that's sort of where I got my chops, was really being able to take the heat, know that how important it was to them, and work their show, and then went over and built Bellagio, built Cirque du Soleil came into town and built that, and then Le Rêve, and now I'm 20 years in where I'm at now at the Wynn Hotel. So I've had a good, probably the best run you could ever have.
And it goes back to talent. I mean, you've got to be reliable. You have to have the talent, because those casinos, people go there on vacation, but they're businesses. The entertainment is a business. So if you weren't at the top of your game, pal, you'd be working a table or something. I mean, it's it goes back to how talented you are first on the track, but then you translated your entertainment background and your family heritage into a whole nother another set of talents.
Well, thanks. They would always say to us, it's called show business for a reason.
Right.
It's not show fun. It's not show up late. it's show business, and they're making a buck. And so I've been really blessed because I get it. Working for my dad, I watched how he did it. My mom was super talented and kept me out of trouble. And being backstage growing up as a kid, sort of learned the rules early.
Yeah, because you got to put butts in seats every night. It's what your dad did as an entertainer and you did as an entertainer. And I mean that from your jumping was entertainment. You realized that you could translate that in your BMX career and then later on in your lighting. And we've remained friends post BMX, and we've had some interaction. And I know I've been able to drag you out to some of the events in Vegas that I've been part of, or we've had fun at, and that was always fun getting together with you,
Yeah, I always appreciate when you call, because Interbike used to be here, so I'd see everybody every year, every year. And you talked about Interbike in the past, and it was good because I never lost touch with my friends, because that's the best. That's the most thing I got out of BMX is the quality people that you just, my truck broke down while I was mountain biking this weekend, and I had 3 friends helping out. A guy drove from Vegas to St. George to pick up my truck, put it in his trailer, Gary Laurent. And then another buddy, ex-racer, picked up my girlfriend and drove her back because she needed to be back. And then TJ was in the loop and said, "Hey, do you need me to come too?" And it's just really healthy that the friendships have continued. That's the best part of it all. This BMX community.
And we always have things in common, because I know drag you out to Barrett Jackson when they were in Vegas, and I'd bring you out. We'd sit there and we'd talk BMX while we watched cars go across the stage.
It's such a treat. I mean, it's sort of like what you did before, but on steroids.
Yeah,
like you didn't have to build the track though.
Exactly. Well, let's start wrapping this up. You mentioned TJ Lavin, who you've been buddies with him for a long time, since the 4 years you spent as manager of Specialized Team, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't even get into that.
Yeah, that was the X Games era and stuff was just, man, it was just icing on the cake.
Well, that's for another show. Other layers of the tracer fin onion that we can peel back here, because I mean, I've got notes sitting here that I wanted to ask you about, and we start smiling and laughing and talking and everything. But I think we'll call it quits right now, and we'll have to have you back on the show sometime, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I treated it serious. I'm proud that I got to be on your short list, and much luck to you guys. And sorry about Tim, but it's the only time we're going to beat him technology-wise.
But is there anything that we didn't bring up that you wanted to hit on before we call it a night?
Well, just how appreciative I am. Like all these, like Todd Huffman and Mike and his crew with Dirty Knobs and all things BMX, all the podcasts that you guys are, all these different teams are bringing out, is just layering and bringing things back that just make you smile. So just appreciative of everybody keeping the, even the bike collectors. I used to think it was crazy. I go, you spent how much? Like it's one of those, if we would have known, but just thank him to, Mark Darcy and what he's doing with the collector stuff. And, you have things all tucked away. I bet you walk around your house and go, oh, look at this 1978, Worlds,
that's a nice way of saying I'm a pack rat. I know.
Yeah. So just the people that have been keeping the flame burning, that's been awesome. And today Olympics are going on, all this stuff. It just, where the heck is all the time gone?
You brought up the Olympics, and I was watching some of the coverage, Tracer, and we talk about our days jumping and doing, we do a tabletop or a one-hander, or like you said, a 360 one-hander. I was watching the freestyle today, and the guy from Argentina that did he inverted did I was trying to remember what trick he did, but I was just like going, we would have never even a million years thought of doing that. And
No.
and then he lands and rides out of it and goes into another trick right away. I'm just like, my God, they're going upside down is nothing anymore. You know, I mean, the whole backflip and like that used to be, I mean, I found the first guy who ever did a backflip on a bike, and I found him doing it into the river, and then we hired him to go to the BMX races. Now it's like, oh yeah, every kid, you know, who's got a ramp is doing them, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I could fly off with, you know, the announcer was a Vegas local Connor Fields who won a gold medal.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, if you talk about us starting out on a hillbilly track with the rubber band start in the middle of nowhere, and to have people that classy and that awesome, and, you know, makes everybody look good.
It's come a long ways, and
Yep.
And we can be proud to be the guys who forged a little bit of that territory on the way there. And Tracer, you did so much for it, did so much with that smile and with that style and with your wins as a BMX rider. We're so happy to have you on Super Rad BMX, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank Tim.
I will let him know. And
right.
Hey, everyone, you know what? Please remember, follow us on iTunes, Super Rad BMX, and on YouTube, Super Rad BMX. Always leave us a positive comment, a thumbs up, whatever, 5 stars, whatever it is. And you can support us by picking up some of our swag at Radmatic. That's with 2 T's, radmatic.com. So go there, check it out. And you know what? We'll be back next week. That's a promise, not a threat.
This is the Super Rad BMX Podcast. Down the first straight is the cruising cornhusker over the jump bonsai Brad. Now your host Brad Fanshaw and Tim Lilladora.
Get ready to represent the Super Rad BMX Podcast in style with these Rad BMX t-shirts. They're perfect for listening to your favorite Super Rad BMX Podcast episodes, hitting the track, or cruising around town, and showing off your passion for BMX culture. Join the Super Rad BMX community and showcase your love for this podcast with these awesome vintage BMX t-shirts. Order yours today on radmatic.com and ride in style.